During my recent 5-month visit to China, I realized that the Chinese army plays an enormously important role in the whole society. The People's Liberation Army, or PLA as it is usually called, is like no other army in the world. It is in fact much more than an army. It's a vast school of politics, engineering, agriculture, and medicine, and acts also as an immense reserve labor force. From the very first, Mao Zedong laid down the principle that the purpose of a people's army was to serve the people. The Chinese army began as a small guerrilla force which was setting out to overthrow the whole power of the state, and its very survival depended on the support of the people around it. One of the reasons for the success of the revolution, perhaps the main reason, was the army's close relationship with the people, and this they have maintained until the present day. This film doesn't concern itself with the higher levels of the military command, nor with the Chinese army as an international force, but rather with how the army operates on a day-to-day level. I believe that if we understand the principles on which the army is based, it will give us a good insight into China as a whole. Everywhere we went in China, we saw the army taking part in civilian activities. And here in the far south, in Yunnan province, a contingent of the PLA is helping one of the minority peoples, the Thais, to plant rice. To take part in civilian work is one of the accepted functions of the PLA. Standing armies in Western countries, at least during peacetime, are chronically underemployed. China, however, uses her military manpower for all kinds of work that directly benefits the people. Every military base, as far as we saw, attempts to serve the civilian population in its area. This medical team, for instance, has walked to this small northern village from their base 6 miles away. The unit comes here regularly and is on very friendly terms with the peasants. The military unit can provide more advanced medical assistance than is normally available to the peasants in this village clinic. In another village, we found a PLA unit helping to clean the streets. The army is largely a peasant army, so when the troops come to work in a village or help to plant rice, they are doing work they are accustomed to. Their peasant background also explains a certain simplicity of manner, a lack of sophistication. We didn't anywhere come across any of the usual spit and polish or military swagger. Soldiers and villagers assemble for a village meeting. These recruits were all born after 1949, and so never experienced what conditions were like before the revolution. It is part of their political education to listen to older people describe their former abject poverty and hunger. There was no way out, this man is saying. We were all suffering, but the authorities would not listen. The district officer just stood up and shouted at us. This soldier is saying, never again will these conditions occur. If the people suffer, we are here to help them. Sometimes it is the civilians who help the military. To learn some mechanical skill, these PLA men are being given some instruction from workers at a local factory. In winter, when work in the fields is impossible, peasants undertake major projects that will increase their agricultural production. Here, hundreds of peasants are digging an irrigation canal, and the army is organized to give them help. Members of the PLA are a highly politically conscious group of men with great influence, largely because of the example they set in their behavior. The sight of army officers and men working side by side with no difference in status is a striking political lesson to the peasants who are working with them. The army is responsible for training the civilian militia. China doesn't rely only on the PLA for her military security. Tens of millions of young men and women in China are trained for civilian defense. Being taught how to lay mines. China has never disclosed the size of her regular army, but foreign experts believe it to be around 3 million. In relation to our population, this is a small army compared, say, to that of the Soviet Union or the United States. In the event of invasion, however, the army could rely on the support of a vast people's militia trained in rifle fire and guerrilla tactics, an immense defense in depth. The primary purpose of any army is to be an effective fighting force. We stayed for nearly a week at this particular army base, which is fairly close to Peking. A number of other Western reporters have made briefer visits here, and this at first made me suspect it was something of a showcase. But after seeing the army in operation in a number of other places, I concluded that this base was quite representative. While with the PLA, we came in for many surprises. I never saw a soldier salute an officer. Officers wear no insignia or special uniforms. All officers are drawn from the ranks, chosen from among the many recruits who want to stay on and make the army their career. There's a saying in the army, officers teach soldiers, soldiers teach officers. I took this to be nothing more than just a good slogan, until one day at rifle drill, I saw a young soldier apparently telling an officer what to do. I asked what was going on, and they explained that the recruit, who had recently joined, was found to be a crack shot. So here he was, instructing his instructor. No one thought this in the least odd. Criticism goes both ways too. During mortar practice, I noticed that one group had called a halt. We found, when we went up to them, that their officer was answering complaints by his men about the way he had been giving his orders. He is replying to this criticism by saying that the men should be more flexible. But this man is telling his officer that when a squad leader gives instructions, he must be patient, he must explain, he must demonstrate. This unusual officer-man relationship does not appear to affect discipline. The Chinese army is one of the most disciplined armies I have ever seen. Yet it is so clean contrary to what goes on in our armies that one can't help wondering what happens in actual combat, until one remembers that it was this army, trained on these lines, that fought the Americans to a standstill in Korea, and that so decisively beat the Indian Army in 1962. Officers and men appear to be on an equal footing socially and politically. They eat in the same mess, sleep in the same quarters. Formal ranks have been abolished. Officers are known by their function, not by rank. Pay is nominal. Enlisted men are paid the equivalent of $2.40 a month, and an officer earns $8 a month. Thus, a career in the Chinese army does not imply a privileged life. Enlistment in the army is for 3 years. It's 4 for the Air Force, 5 for the Navy. Many more men apply to join the army than they have room for. As long ago as 1945, Mao Zedong was urging the army to be, as far as possible, self-supporting. The army growing its own food lessens the burden on the state supplies. But Mao gave other reasons as well. Working together in this way, he said, officers and men become like brothers. And, he went on, they will be an encouragement to the peasants, who will not see the products of their own hard work being carried off by the army. Making their own bean curd from soya beans, a common food in China. The army, as far as it's possible, also makes its own medicines. Almost none of the recruits are married, but officers' wives, even the wife of the divisional commander, work in the pharmaceutical factory attached to the divisional headquarters. In political classes such as these, the recruits make an intensive study of the works of Mao Zedong. From the very beginning, Mao laid down the principle that the Chinese army must always remain under party control, and that an army's political understanding and morale is more important than technique and weaponry.
因为他树立了全心全意为人民服务的实践。第三，在这个宗旨下面。
The instructor is saying, our soldiers must devote all their energies to the needs of the people. We must be willing to work hard. This is what enabled us to win our victory in the revolution.
这个我们从事征战啊，劳动，也是我们战胜敌人、取得革命胜利的法宝之一。
In addition to the formal classes, there are informal political discussions.
这个关于阶级斗争问题。
This officer is saying, our subject is the class struggle. That is what we will discuss today.
我看今天讨论的形式。
The officer asks, who will start the discussion?
这不仅启示了同一个问题。
One of the men responds by reading a critique of capitalist society.
全部客观事实，这个阶级敌人的新博士，他老想变迁，这个不比资本主义。
In the evenings, the troops relax. The divisional commander plays ping pong with one of the young recruits. Next door, in the dormitory, an officer talks to a group of young recruits. He reminded me rather of a master talking to schoolboys. The minimum age for enlistment is 18, and some of these recruits look extremely young. An officer takes his turn cutting the men's hair.
都是这个阶级斗争的。
您哪有那跳法呢？这儿往那干嘛跳的？他这儿对，是哪儿的？他在这边跳的。啊？这儿。
Chinese checkers.
啊，在这儿啊。啊，这可以，该我们了啊。可以。你眼睛不错，这个大红头。这里给来劲了吧？
Soldiers help each other with some of the minor chores like mending uniforms or repairing shoes. Every now and again, the men stage a show for themselves. All the numbers we saw had some political connotation. But day by day, the military training of the army goes on. There's no question that China's military forces lack much of the technical sophistication of Western armies. Foreign experts have noted that our army is very small in relation to her population, and that she has no heavy bombers or large warships. They believe that China is developing our armed forces essentially for defensive purposes. These tanks are made in China. It has become the custom on New Year's Day for army units to have open house and invite the local population to come and visit them. And they are greeted in true Chinese style. Whatever the army may lack in size or sophisticated weaponry, there seemed to me no doubt that the Chinese have a genuine affection for their army and enormous confidence in its defensive capabilities. In the last analysis, it is this unity of army and people that gives China its strength.